Welcome to our deep dive into the nature of reality. We've got some excerpts from a text by Shri Suresh, a disciple of Shri Raghavendra Rao Sahib. And, whew, this is some pretty intense stuff, gotta say.
It really is. And what's interesting is Shri Suresh really jumps right in. We're hit with this disclaimer right off the bat. Cleanse your manas with practice of sadhana and then go through literature. Otherwise, reality will be lost upon you.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. It's like he's saying, hey, you got to be ready for this. This isn't just, a light read.
Exactly. It's like he's saying you need more than just, an intellectual understanding. Like you got to be ready.
So how do we cleanse our manas? What is sadhana?
Well, sadhana, it's a whole bunch of spiritual practices, things like meditation, self-inquiry, ethical living. It's about quieting the mind and sort of like refining how you see things.
Okay, I get that. So with that in mind, let's dive into these excerpts. One thing that pops up a lot is this comparing the world to a dream. Like, Sri Suresh talks about life as a plantain grove, souls trapped looking for liberation. He even has this story about Leela, who has a vision of a whole kingdom in her mind. Why is this dream analogy so important in his teaching?
It's a really powerful way to like make you think about what's real.
Yeah.
It shows how limited our senses are and how much our minds actually create what we experience. Like think about it, in a dream, everything feels real, but then you wake up and you're like, whoa, it was all fake. Shri Suresh is saying that maybe our whole life, with all its craziness, maybe it's kind of like that, a big long dream.
Okay, so are you saying this table, this microphone, all of this, it's not real?
Well, he's not saying it doesn't exist. He's saying it's not permanent, and how we experience it is subjective. Like in Leela's vision, the kingdom was real to her, but it only existed in her mind. So what we think is real is really tied to our consciousness.
It's a really interesting idea. It makes you wonder what's actually out there and what's just like our minds making things up.
Right. And if our minds are shaping our reality, then the next question is how can we use that power, to make our experience better, more fulfilling, more free?
That's a good transition, actually, because Sri Suresh also talks about how our minds can trap us or they can set us free.
Mhm.
And there's this story about Suchi the Needle, who used to be this powerful demoness, Karkati. That story seems to show this idea really well.
It does. Karkati going from a powerful demoness to like a tiny needle. And even then, she's still learning and growing. It shows how powerful the mind is, how it shapes who we are, and how we can still grow even when it seems like we're limited.
That story really got to me. This powerful being choosing to experience the world in a totally different way, even if it means becoming something most people would think is, I don't know, worse.
What do you think Shri Suresh is trying to say with that story? There's a lot to unpack there. On one level, it's like this idea that existence is a cycle.
Yeah.
What we do, what we want, even in past lives, it shapes what happens to us. Karkati becoming a needle wasn't a punishment. It was more like the result of what she did before, a chance to learn and change.
So even though she's a needle, she's not like stuck. She can still grow and be free.
Exactly. And it also shows the power of choice. Karkati chose to be a needle, even though it meant giving up power and status. It's like we can choose how we see things and see challenges as opportunities to grow.
Okay, so we talked about the world being like a dream, the power of our minds, and this really interesting transformation story. But I'm curious about where this dream, this reality we're all experiencing, where it comes from. Sri Suresh talks about Brahma, this like all-encompassing consciousness, the source of creation. What can you tell us about Brahma and how it fits into Sri Suresh's philosophy?
Brahma it's a really deep concept. Sri Suresh uses these really vivid images to describe it, like a lotus seed holding the whole universe, a glowing gem that's everywhere. These images are trying to show Brahma as pure consciousness, the foundation of everything, where everything comes from and goes back to.
That sounds kind of like the idea of oneness that I've heard about in other spiritual traditions.
Yeah.
Is Sri Suresh saying we're all just little pieces of the same, I don't know, cosmic ocean?
That's a question that deserves a deeper look,
Yeah.
and it's one that we'll definitely explore more as we continue our deep dive.
Welcome back to our deep dive. When we left off, we were starting to talk about Brahma, this idea of pure consciousness. And you asked a really good question. If everything comes from Brahma, are we all just like little drops in the same cosmic ocean?
Yeah, that question has really been sticking with me. It's kind of amazing, but also a little freaky. If we're all one, what about, what makes us each unique? What about free will and all that? Well, Sri Suresh gets into those questions by talking about Maya, which is usually translated as illusion. But Maya isn't saying that what we experience isn't real. It's more about understanding how our perception, how we see the world is kind of like a veil,
So Maya is like a filter on our consciousness, changing how we experience things.
Exactly. Our minds, they're shaped by, well, our desires, what we've done in the past, even what's going on around us right now. All that creates this unique lens, like we're each watching the same movie, but with different colored glasses on.
That's a cool way to put it.
Right.
So how do we get past those limitations? Shri Suresh mentions sahana, that practice of cleansing the mind. Does that help us see through Maya?
Exactly. Sahana isn't just about feeling good, blissful or whatever. It's about seeing things more clearly, getting rid of the mental junk that distorts our view. Through things like meditation and really looking at ourselves, we can start to notice how Maya affects us and kind of untangle ourselves from it.
So it's like peeling away layers to see what's really there. But I bet it's not easy, is it?
Shri Suresh says it can be tough, yeah. But even small steps can change how we understand things. Remember that disclaimer at the beginning about cleansing our manas before even reading these ideas? It's like a reminder that really getting it isn't just about knowing facts, it takes work, inner work.
So it's not enough to just read about it. You got to live it, put it into practice in your life.
Right. And as we do that, Shri Suresh says we might experience different levels of liberation. He talks about Jivan Mukta, which is like being liberated while you're still alive, and Vidha Mukta, being liberated after death.
Those sound pretty intense. What do those levels of liberation actually look like?
Well, Jivan Mukta isn't about running away from the world or becoming some kind of superhero. It's about a deep shift in how you see things, a realization of who you really are and how everything is connected.
So you're still in the world, dealing with all the ups and downs, but it doesn't control you anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Like, imagine being able to notice your thoughts and feelings without being totally swept away by them, to go through tough times without losing your peace. That's what Jivan Mukta is about. Freedom, even when life is crazy.
And what about Videha Mukta? Is that like the ultimate goal?
Shri Suresh says Videha Mukta is when the individual soul completely merges with Brahma. It's transcending all limits and duality. It's usually talked about as something that happens after death, but some believe it can happen while you're alive, too.
Wow, that's hard to even imagine. But it makes me wonder, if everything goes back to Brahma in the end, what's the point of anything? Why do anything if we just end up back where we started?
That's a question that's been around for ages. Shri Suresh doesn't give an easy answer, but he says the journey itself changes us. By trying to understand, by being compassionate and wise, we're contributing to the evolution of consciousness itself.
So it's not just about our own enlightenment, it's about playing a part in something bigger.
Exactly. Even if we don't reach full liberation in this life, our efforts to clear our minds and act with purpose, they have ripple effects. They go beyond just us.
Okay, that's a powerful thought. But I'm still wrestling with this Brahma idea as the source of everything. It feels so abstract,
Yeah.
How does Shri Suresh connect this vast, formless consciousness to our daily life?
He does it by emphasizing how profoundly everything is interconnected. Remember Suchi, the needle. Her becoming a needle, it might seem like a step down, but it actually shows how consciousness is in all forms.
Wait, are you saying that Suchi's consciousness, even as a needle, is somehow connected to the vastness of Brahma?
Now, that's a question we'll explore further in the next part of our deep dive.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Shri Suresh's exploration of reality. As we've been discussing Brahma and this idea of interconnectedness, I keep thinking back to that disclaimer at the beginning of the text, that we need to cleanse our manas before we can really get these concepts.
It really drives home the point that understanding this stuff goes beyond just, book smarts. It's about cultivating a kind of inner clarity and openness to deeper truths. And that's where sadhana, the practice of purifying the mind, becomes so important.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. We've got the world as a dream, the mind shaping reality, and Brahma as this ultimate source. But how do we actually make this real in our lives? How do we move from head knowledge to actually experiencing it?
Well, Shri Suresh offers a really interesting example in the story of King Lavana and the magic horse. You picked this story out in the excerpts, and I think it provides a key to understanding these concepts on a deeper level.
I'm definitely curious to hear your take on it. For our listeners who haven't read the excerpts, could you give us a quick rundown of the story?
Sure. So King Lavana, he's a good and respected ruler, and he receives this incredible horse as a gift from a mysterious magician. And the magician says this horse can travel anywhere in the world.
Sounds like a pretty awesome gift. What's the catch?
Well, As Lavana starts his journey on this horse, he runs into all these, well, increasingly strange and challenging experiences. He goes through vast deserts, meets weird creatures, and faces all sorts of dangers.
It's like he's entered some fantastical world.
Exactly. And as Lavana tells his story, it becomes clear that this journey wasn't a physical one, but a mental one.
Are you saying the horse and all these experiences were just in his head?
That's exactly what Shri Suresh is suggesting. The horse represents the mind, and Lavana's journey is a metaphor for the mind's ability to create these vivid, immersive experiences. And these experiences, they might feel real, but they're ultimately illusions.
So it's like a dream within a dream. We think we're awake, but our minds are still making up all this stuff.
Right. And that magician who gives Lavana the horse, he represents the power of Maya, the veil of perception that colors how we experience reality.
This story is really making me question what I think is real. How much of what I experience is just like my mind projecting things?
That's the question Shri Suresh wants us to ask. By understanding Maya, this power of the mind to create illusions, we can start to see through those projections and get a clearer view of what's actually real.
So it's not about denying our experiences or hiding from the world, but about understanding the forces that are shaping how we see things.
Exactly. And that's where sadhana comes in. Through practices like meditation and self-inquiry, we can refine our perception, clear out the mental clutter, and start to lift that veil of Maya.
It sounds like a tough path, but one that leads to freedom.
It is. And as we move along that path, Shri Suresh suggests we might experience different levels of understanding and freedom. Remember we talked about Jivan Mukta, liberation while you're still alive.
Yeah, that idea of finding inner freedom even when life is tough.
The story of King Lavana gives us another way to think about Jivan Mukta. Imagine if Lavana, even after realizing his journey was an illusion, could still appreciate the beauty and wonder of those experiences without being attached to them. That's the heart of Jivan Mukta, a state of awareness and detachment that lets us experience the world without getting lost in the illusions.
Okay, so we've explored Brahma, the world is a dream, the power of the mind. But what about Suchi's story? We left off wondering if her consciousness, even as a needle, was connected to Brahma.
That's a great point. You see, even though Suchi's transformation is huge, it doesn't change who she is at her core. Her consciousness, even in a different form, is still a spark of the divine, a reflection of Brahma.
So even as a tiny needle, she still has the potential to be liberated, to reunite with that source of consciousness.
Exactly. Shri Suresh emphasizes that Brahma isn't separate from the world. It's in everything. Every being, every object is a manifestation of that divine consciousness.
That's a really beautiful and powerful idea. It makes me see the world differently, with more awe and wonder, seeing the divine reflected in everything.
That's the power of Shri Suresh's teachings. They encourage us to look deeper, to see the interconnectedness of all things, and the potential for liberation that's within each of us.
Wow, this has been an incredible journey. We've gone pretty deep into some complex ideas, but I feel like I'm leaving with a new perspective, a sense of possibility.
That's the beauty of exploring these ideas. They challenge how we think, expand our awareness, and ultimately empower us to live more consciously and intentionally.
I want to thank you for taking us through these profound teachings. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it sparked your own curiosity and inspired you to keep exploring these ideas.
Remember, self-discovery is a journey that never really ends. Keep asking questions, keep seeking understanding, and keep cultivating that inner clarity that lets you see the world with fresh eyes.
That's something to ponder. And as always, thanks for taking this deep dive with us.